Hi there, Joe Martinez here with the USS Hornet Sea, Air, and Space Museum. We're starting a series of videos to showcase some places on the ship to get public interest up and to teach docents some training videos, and then we want to share all of that with you. Today we're going to start with the Sea King helicopter we have here. It's an SH-3H, and I have the proud distinction of taking care of it on a National Historical Landmark. And I actually flew in this helicopter, not this type, that one. More on that later. But we want to take you on a walk around, show you what it's about, tell you a few things, and give you a tour that you probably won't normally get. All right, so follow me. Come on. Okay, so the first thing you're probably going to want to know about this is it did serve in the military between 1961 and 1995, with the last mission being the lead helicopter in the movie Apollo 13. So if you saw Apollo 13, this is the helicopter. So that's why it's in this paint job. Okay, it's in the paint job of the same helicopter that did the job for real, but that helicopter unfortunately is at the bottom of the ocean. So when they did the movie, they needed to find something to replace it in the film. They picked our squadron, which was based here, based at that time in San Diego, but I flew it here when it was in HS-85 in NAS Alameda. It's a Sea King helicopter. It started out as an Alpha. The first model is an A, then B, C, all the way up the chain. And since we use the phonetic alphabet, an A model would be an Alpha. Then it got modified into a Hotel, an H model later, and this is what you see before you today. It's a four-man helicopter, anti-submarine warfare. Still has all the gear in it. And it also would have enough room for 3 other guys, so up to 7 people. In the front, you may notice that it has sort of a boat hull. Well, that's because it is amphibious. It could land on the water if it had to. It was an emergency situation for us, but it was designed to be that way. And on the outside of the sponsons, you'll see these gray bags. They're actually blowdown bags that act like water wings. In case we have to shut down on the water, it helps stabilize it. This door right here, if you open it up, that's where all the avionics are, the radios, transponders, and a bunch of other stuff, radar sort of items. All the main equipment is in there, except for the sonar gear, which is in the inside. We'll take you there later. Hover lights and floodlights. There's also some under the sponsons. Those are floods go down, hovers go forward so the pilots can see. And this is where the battery is kept. Big heavy battery. That thing is so heavy and so far forward that if you took the battery out, it would change the CG on the helicopter. You wouldn't be able to fly it. That's what I've been told. All right, as we go around, this is one of those cool things. It was shot for the movie Apollo 13. This is one of the things I'd like to point out to people. We kept this the way it was in the film. You might notice that the head of the knight is pointing the wrong way. Why? Because the movie guy screwed it up. And when we restored the helicopter, I had to go, keep it or fix it. I thought it was a better story to keep it, so it's still wrong. These are the 5 missions that this helicopter represents picked up. Very famous helicopter. Had it not crashed, it would be in the Smithsonian where it should be. Unfortunately, that's not where it's at. 2 of the 4 guys that I used to fly with that I decided to paint on here, Jeff Holland and Doug Keener, good guys. Crazy, the best kind of guys to fly with. All right. I get questions a lot of times from kids as to what all these rescue arrows are for. You may not know what those are for. They point to areas to gain access from the outside. Like say, maybe we crash and we're incapacitated. We want the firefighters to be able to pull us out. They all point to handles to pop the windows out, or to cut into a section to get us out, or windows that can be popped out so they can gain access to get into us. Here's one of the steps to get up to the engine compartment so we can do our inspections. Here's one of those blowdown bags. If we go in the water, we can stabilize it by popping these out, because helicopters are notoriously top heavy. They actually take us and train us in a thing called the Dilbert Dunker, to flip upside down and stay calm and get out of that helicopter once it's all stable, because that's what's going to happen. It'll flip over and you will drown in 3 feet of water if you're not trained to deal with that situation and get out. So the blowdown bags help, but it's not guaranteed. Okay. More rescue arrows. Blah, blah, blah. Number one question I get from kids when I do tours on this helicopter, since it was for the movie Apollo 13, I got to restore the frog on the door. And kids ask me, what's with the frog on the door? Number one question kids ask me. Back when we used to put swimmers in the water to help the astronauts get out of the command module, those were called underwater demolition team guys. And today we call them what?
Flatbed.
We call them SEALs, and they are organized into teams. So whatever team got the mission for that particular Apollo 13 recovery, I think it was UDT Team 4, I think it was. Somebody will correct me on that. That was their mascot. Okay, look at that guy. Frog with a six-pack, sucking on a cigar, holding a piece of dynamite. Yep, I will stand behind that frog. Okay. On helicopters, I don't know if you can see it very well here. If they're going to carry torpedoes, they carry them underneath what would be their armpits. So that would be in between the sponsons here. And you will see a photograph pop up here in a second that will show you launching one of those torpedoes that I took back when we were doing an exercise off of, I think, Puget Sound back then. Pretty interesting photograph. Okay, here's the cargo door. So our guests can come up and take a look inside of the very spacious cargo area. Have to remind people to stay out because, you know, we want to keep it nice and pristine. Looks pretty spacious from the outside. It's not too bad. Okay. As we move along toward the back, we actually have the jacket of Mr. Casey, whoever that was, that actually flew the helicopter that picked up Apollo 12 astronauts, Glenn Casey. So he donated it to us. Have it proudly on display right outside of the helicopter. Okay, so all helicopters on aircraft carriers have to be able to fold up their blades and fold their tail because space is very, very precious on a helicopter. So you can see two of the blades here coming down the side. See how flexible these things are. They tuck up against the fuselage, and then because there's no power on it, they can droop, which is why we have them tied to the side of the helicopter here. And that pipe coming down back behind the tail wheel there, that is the fuel dump. And your rotary rudder blades on the folded sponson here, you can see how big those are. These are just the tail rotor blades. I used to fly Robinson R-22s when I was learning how to fly helicopters. This is how wide the main rotors are on a Robinson R-22. So that'll show you a size comparison between the big and the small. Okay, we're going to walk around the back here. Okay, on the back side you can see the ratchet assembly that the tail rotor would close up, the pin would go out, the linkage for the tail rotor would all come together. We ratchet it, put a big pin in there, it goes up and keeps everything together, and now we're ready to fly. All right, walking down around the back. There is a hoist point here for bringing up armament on here. On some helicopters you could put another torpedo there. That never happened during my career. Actually, I've never even seen anything mounted on these. But this is where we would put the torpedo, right in here if we were going to take one out and do an exercise or actually go out and try and take care of an enemy submarine. Now on the other sponson, this is the sponson, is long. On that side we would have an instrument called a magnetic anomaly detector, a mad bird, looks like a little missile, and that would detect metal objects underwater passively. So we would trail that behind us to get away from the magnetic field of the helicopter, and we would trail that above the water a couple hundred feet, and if it passed over anything big and metal under the water, it would disturb the magnetic flux of the Earth's atmosphere, or the Earth's magnetic field, and we could detect that without putting anything in the water. And we took that out because it wasn't used in the movie Apollo 13. That will be mounted on our Command SH2 when it gets ready. On this side, that long sponson in the after part of it would have a smoke launcher underneath it with a bunch of smokes that we could punch out into the water to mark various events that happen on the water, say a guy that we have to rescue or the position of a submarine as we detect it and detect it going around in our search pattern. Okay, over here we have one of our ground start electrical ports. This is for the main one, 440 power. Up near the nose on the other side is another one that's for DC battery power. That doesn't want to close very well. These red caps are manually fueling the 3 fuel bags that we have on board. All the fuel is on the bottom half of the aircraft. We also have a pressure fitting on the other side where the ladder was that we climbed up and looked inside. Again, another blowdown bag for stabilization if we have to shut down in the water. And the crew entry door. Alright, here's how we actually get into the helicopter. So let's talk about the names that are on this. Now, this is one of those things that when it came to restoring the helicopter, even though it was in the movie Apollo 13, I got to choose who was going to be on the side of the helicopter, and I chose 4 guys that I actually flew with. Jeff Holland on the other side, who, well, anytime I had a really good story about flying in a helicopter, it's because he was flying it. You'll have to ask me questions about that in person. And Doug Keener, really good guy. Scott Allen, an FAA guy that retired as a captain, really good guy. And John Pasty Pasternak. If you saw the movie Apollo 13, the swimmer that's in the water that goes and bangs up on the command module and helps out Tom Hanks, that's Pasty. So I'm a god to those guys because I put their names on a helicopter that's on a National Historical Landmark. Got to take care of your buddies. All right, let's go on inside the helicopter and take a look in the pilot's portion of the show. All right, first thing you want to do when you go to the helicopter is check in here. This is a little thing called the Broom Closet. This is where all the actuators to make everything work moves up and down, and you really want to inspect in there well, because if something goes bad in there, it's going to be a really bad day. So virtually everybody takes a look in the Broom Closet. Okay. Also, we have the map case. This is where we usually kept our NATOPS manual. See, there's a little chart board here, and your best friend flying, a relief tube. Okay. That's where you can relieve yourself in flight, not over a housing area, hopefully. And your first aid kit. All right, I'm going to climb in. We'll talk about the flight station next. All right. So, getting into these things, you have to be pretty much a contortion artist. But once you get in them, they're pretty cozy. And this is pretty roomy for a helicopter, trust me. All right, standard stuff. The collective, for those of you that don't know helicopter controls, the collective is what pitches the rotor blades collectively. So that's what allows you to go up and down and hover. And the cyclic operates just like a normal aircraft. You push forward to go down, you pull it back, go up, left and right, blah, blah, blah. In between the two of these, you fly the helicopter. And the rudder pedals are just the same, except you're not actually pushing the rudder, you're pitching the blades on the tail rudder to turn your left and right. And being a certified helicopter pilot myself, the surprising thing is once you get in forward flight, you really don't use the rudder pedals at all. It's one of those unique things about helicopters. But the question I get a lot from people is, why does the commander of a helicopter fly in the right seat for the most part? Well, especially in the Sikorsky helicopter, it's because Igor liked flying in the right seat. So that's where all the main stuff for the commander is. You notice this collective has a lot more stuff on it than that one. And there's more instruments and controllability things over here than the co-pilot, such as the parking brake and the tail lock for the tail wheel. Both sides have a window that you can pop out in an emergency. Okay. All right, the center console, lots of goodies down here. Got the TACNAV computer, that's what we punch all the sonar information into so they can get a big display of what's going on in the tactical situation there. We got some radios. What else we got? The TACNAV controls. More sets of radios. This is the armament panel. Automatic stabilization equipment panel. Lets the helicopter hover by itself. Sonar buoy launcher. Let's see, we got the jettison panel, so whatever we want to get rid of in an emergency, we could dump. The hoist, the reel, shaft, buoys, sonar, whatever we need be. Smoke marker launcher. And this is information that we can dial into the torpedo if we were going to launch a torpedo before we launch it. And what else do we have here? We got some more radios, fuel dump. Anything in red or yellow is bad. You don't want to keep your Vulcan grubbies off of those things. Okay, so on the overhead panel we have a number of things, starting with the rotor brake. That will actually stop the rotor head because on the ground with the engines running they will freewheel, and we don't want to have that when you got guys coming in and out of the helicopter. So we put the rotor brake on. The throttles are up here, interestingly enough, and they're all operated just like that, and they've got some electrical components in there, so if those poop out for some reason, we lose a generator, we can operate the engines independently by the emergency fuel selectors and fuel controls here, but that's a direct cable drive right to the engine, so you have to be very careful not to overspeed the engine in that instance. Fire control handles to fire off the fire bottles if need be. Lighting systems and some other cool stuff. Lots of circuit breakers. Lots and lots and lots of circuit breakers. So, okay, and that's pretty much the flight station. Let's go back and explore the sonar control panels and the sonar station. All right, well, welcome to the sonar operator station. This is obviously where we run the sonar and the magnetic anomaly detector to hunt for submarines. Generally, at least with the reserve units that I flew with, the junior crewman generally sat on this side and operated the gear, and the senior crewman would stand over here and operate all of this gear to vacuum up and back up the pilots. You'll notice that we have a cutout through here so we can look through the panel and see if the pilots need some help or whatever it may be. Anyway, standard stuff you've seen in every submarine movie. This is the actual sonar scope. We're dipping the sonar from 50 feet in the air down to up to 450 feet because we have 500 feet of cable, and that gives us a range that we can raise and lower the sonar to break through different layers in the water to help find the submarine, either passively or actively with pinging. Passively is where we don't do anything, just sit there and listen and observe, and hopefully the submarine will make enough noise for us to find him before we start putting sound in the water and giving away our location, as if he doesn't know where we are anyway. All right, so how does this work? Electronic display, ping, boop, goes out, tries to find a contact in here just like your submarine movies. This is all electronic, but we have a hard copy that we can get off of this little machine here. This is called a multi-purpose display, an MPR. Multi-purpose recorder, sorry. This can record a number of things, but what it does the most is, let's say we have this set from 0 to 1,000 yards. As this goes ping, whoop, it'll burn a line from here, which is you, all the way up to 1,000 yards. And to where this can't make a hard copy, that can. So wherever we come across a target, boop, it'll come across and boop, burn that target there. And as this scrolls up, that's time, and you can start to see the trends here that this guy is slowly moving in closer to you. This doesn't give you bearing, but it does give you range. This gives you bearing because you can put the cursor right on top of it and read out bearing and range here. So between the two, you can see what the big picture is. Okay. What the senior crewman does is back him up, and when we get bearing and range here on this keypad, he can plug that in, and it goes right into the TAC-NAV computer and punches up, and the pilots can see what we're getting back here by us transferring it to them. They take care of where they drop sonar buoys, and between that, the big picture, they can control what's going on. A lot of people get freaked out over all the stuff that's going on here. It's a very busy panel. Let me explain what all this is. A lot of it's redundant. Okay, this is radios and ICS. Obviously, the guy on the left-hand side is going to have that too, down here and down here. All these knobs, it's basically one controller to listen to one sonar buoy, but we can listen up to 8. That's why we have 8 of these here. What else is there? This is kind of an interesting unit. When we lower the sonar down via this control into the water, this tells us where the cable is tending. So if we're in a place that the water is moving, it can pull the Sonar Dome, and it pulls it off to the side. We can line this up so that the helicopter will stay right on top of the cable so the sonar doesn't drift. We drift along with it. Okay. Beyond that, pretty cool stuff. This is the how we control all of this up here. We can change the different displays to waterfall display or a standard scope. So that's the sonar data computer. Standard 8-day clock, some vents, and some lights. So that, in a nutshell, is the sonar operator station. Okay, so before we move to the after station, I want to talk about what's directly behind the sonar operator station, which is the Sonar Dome and the reeling machine, which is what we have right here. Okay, so this is actually the heart of the operation. We can't do any ASW work, anti-submarine warfare work, without the Sonar Dome, and it's housed in this enclosure right here. It's got a clear section on it, front and back, so as we bring it up and lower it, we can actually turn around and see whether the Sonar Dome is in trail right below the helicopter. That's where we keep it when we transit from one spot to another. Or when we actually bring it up and stow it, we can see that it's up, stowed, and seated, and we're ready to move on. And we can shut the sonar system down. The dome is actually, as you see in the photograph, kind of shaped, kind of like an ice cream cone in a way. It has vertical staves on the outside of the hydrophone, which is the part that does the listening in all of the different directions. And then there's a thing sticking out the bottom of the projector. That's the actual part that goes ping to project out sound, and then the sound comes back and gets picked up by the hydrophones, which is the staves on the side that are actually the listening devices. This is the reel behind it. This is what houses the 500 feet of cable, so we can lower it down 450 feet into the water. Remember, we're 50 feet off the water in a hover as we lower the dome, and this allows us to put the dome in the water in where it's more advantageous as far as the layers in the water to detect the submarine. It's hydraulically actuated, but there are some things we can do to bypass that if we need to. Like say if the sonar gets stuck and the reeling machine just quits on us for some reason, we can push this button with our foot. It bypasses the hydraulics, and we have a speed handle which we can crank that dude up. I've never had to do that, thank God, but I do know some guys that have had to recover it that way by hand. One pushes the button, the other one takes this thing and pulls the whole reel. Glad I never had to do that, but this is where it all is right here. We do have our dome, we do have all the equipment. This helicopter is complete, so we're really lucky to have such a good looking helicopter. All right, let's go back to the after station. Okay, now we're in the after station. We're aft of the crewman position, we are aft of the sonar reeling machine, and we are in the cargo bay area. As you can see, it's expansive, so we could bring cargo in, move people out, whatever we need to do. We also had 3 extra seats for crew if we needed them, so we could carry a total of 7 people. We were only supposed to fly as many people as we had seats for, but of course in an emergency you'd pile in as many people as you could. Also we have the raft here. That was my job and the crewman's job, so that if we had to go down in the water, our job was to put the raft out and have it inflated before the pilots got into it so they could tiptoe into it without even getting their feet wet. At least that's what we were told. Also, on a hotel model, we have 12 sonar buoy chutes that we can reload. Here's a sonar buoy. This is one of many that we have, many different types. So what we would do is take a specific type, whatever it is, put it in a numbered chute and tell the pilot what sonar buoy is in that chute. And with their tac nav, they can select it as needed, punch it out, mark it in the water, and now we have a good track on it. Okay. Also, what we have is room in the back for a cruise box to take extra gear with us, and some other boxes would go here that we have had removed since it's been a museum aircraft. We no longer need those boxes. Also, we have over here the horse collar, the rescue strap, and this is what we lower into the water to have the rescue person put on and gets picked up out of the water like that on our hoist. We also have back here, this is a jungle penetrator, much heavier. It can go down through the trees, the branches, and with no problem. And then the guy just lowers the seat, climbs on board, puts a strap on, and we haul him up. Also, when we're transporting these sonar buoys, they come in these containers. Now, if you're a Trekkie, the Star Trek universe is full of these, especially the movies. Star Trek The Next Generation has tons of these. It's a cool looking prop that they can paint silver, and it looks real spacey. And it's simply a sonar buoy shipping container. So next time you watch Star Trek, pick these out. Now, we talked earlier outside about the sponson on the port side having smokes in it. This is what the smoke looks like. This is a Mark 25. It's a saltwater activated flare, basically, that floats in the water. And how you prep these are, you pull the plug out the bottom. That's where the salt water is going to go in. Ignite this thing. And when it hits the water, it'll float like this. Salt water gets in there, it ignites it. This plug shoots out, so you don't want to be flying over it or hovering over it when it goes off. This could punch a hole in your aircraft. And it will burn for up to 15 minutes. And what we would use these for is to mark a datum in the water. Someplace we want to go, oh, there it is, keep track of it, come back again. We used them a lot to practice picking up a guy. So we'd punch one of these out and say, that's the guy we want to go rescue. And we'd come back and do patterns and practice over the top of this guy. If we wanted to do stuff for extended periods of time, we would put in a Mark 58, which we have an example of right here. Much bigger. Basically, it's two of the Mark 15s, Mark 25s, I'm sorry, put together. You just open this thing up like a tuna can. There's two right there. Throw it out, and this would burn for up to 45 minutes. Okay, so on this helicopter, all the fuel is below us under the floorboards. So this little hatch here, open this up, and it allows us access to the fuel filters right here. There's 6 of those in case something clogs up. We can change those out because the main fuel, when we get fuel from the ground, comes in through the side. But this dude right here allows us to do aerial refueling, just like a lot of aircraft. And we do it a little bit differently. We come in behind a destroyer or a frigate, fly off to the side of it, hover while we're flying 10-15 knots into the wind, and they raise up a hose to us on the hoist, and we plug it in right there. And while we're flying along, we can take on fuel from that ship, which is pretty cool stuff. It extends our range and our mission capability and our flight time, and it's a pretty convenient thing to do. So, you probably didn't know that. Now you do. Let's talk about the hoist station over here. Okay, so this is actually where you do the hoisting from. Grab the hoist there. You bring it down with this control right here, plug into your ICS, and this is the thing I always like to show people. This is the tricky part about being a crewman. With this one hand, because you're holding onto the hoist and the cable controlling it, you have to control 3 things at the same time. This is the hoist, this is the ICS. Now the pilots are 15 feet up ahead of you. They can't see what's below you. So once we're on top, they will give you control of the helicopter with a thing called hover trim. This is the hover trim stick. Okay, they would say, you have control, have the light on, say yes I have control, Boom. Now you can fly the helicopter. So you're hoisting, you're talking, and you're flying the helicopter with just one stick while you are trying to stay on top of the rescuee. Okay? This will give you a forward, lateral movement, whatever, up to 4.5 knots, I believe it was. So you just brace your hand and go in there and fly the helicopter. And under the right conditions, comes off without a hitch. These things, if they were sloppy, oh my God, that was really a pain because it would like build up and then run away from you. But if they were tight, you could almost think in whatever direction you wanted to go and it would go. So, tricky part, all this stuff. That was the cool part about being a crewman. All right? Okay, so that is our Sea King helicopter. Hope you come to the ship sometime and check it out. More videos are on their way. After this one, we're going to want to do one on engine technology, from the reciprocating engine helicopters to the T-58 engine, which really revolutionized helicopter design and flight philosophy and a bunch of other stuff. So that's it for this one. Thank you for being here. I want to thank my best buddy Ernie Cooper for making this all possible. I'm the talent and kind of the director, but he does all the technical stuff, and it wouldn't happen without him. Okay? So, from the USS Hornet Sea, Air, and Space Museum, we'll see you next time. Thank you.